Hello, today is November 14th. I'm Diane Sayre, former independent candidate for U.S. Senate in New York, and I wanted to share my assessment of the current strategic situation with you because I believe we are at a very important moment, and my first admonition is beware of spectatoritis. Let me situate the current situation. One, the American people overwhelmingly rejected Liz and Dick Cheney and the British Empire in the guise of the Kamala Harris bid for the presidency. Two, former President Donald Trump made probably the most spectacular comeback in American political history, maybe in world history, surviving 2 assassination attempts, 91 indictments, to become the 47th president of the United States. Now, and 3, which we can't leave out because it does create some difficulties, is that Zionist moneybags, Miriam Adelson, poured $100 million into this new administration, but nobody said that things were going to be perfect. So, where do we stand? Well, on the spectatoritis, what I mean is Trump dumped Pompeo and Nikki Haley in a post on X. Hooray! Trump brought in Mark Rubio as Secretary of State. Boo. He brought in Elise Stefanik as ambassador to the UN. Boo. He brought in some idiot who doesn't know anything, Hespeth, as defense secretary. Boo. He brought in Tulsi Gabbard. Hooray. He brought in Matt Gaetz. Hooray. That's spectatoritis. Now, it is the case that the importance of individuals that Trump is bringing into his cabinet should not be ignored. It is important that Pompeo and Nikki Haley were not selected. It is also important that Tulsi Gabbard, who is known to be very concerned about the danger of nuclear war and to have had taken a courageous stand against escalating the Ukraine war against Russia, is going to be the director of national intelligence and in a position of briefing the president on a daily basis, who will then give orders to the Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, UN Ambassador, etc. This is something Scott Ritter has pointed out. But really, what does this mean? It means don't wait to see how things unfold. Don't wait to see who is knocked out of the administration or who is brought in as a replacement. We have to consider where we are right now. Number one, the transatlantic financial system is going to disintegrate. It is simply going to crash. There is no way that the $4 quadrillion bubble of derivatives can be saved. So just forget it. It's over. That's the main driver of war. On the other hand, a new system, which Lyndon and Helga LaRouche and myself, although not for over 50 years, but over 30 years, were calling for decades, is coming into being. And that is in the form of the BRICS plus nations, who just met in Kazan, Russia, October 22nd through 24th. And they now represent about 4.5 billion people. That's over 57% of the world's population. Let me just remind you, in terms of the disintegration of the West, the day that Donald Trump was declared victor of the elections in Germany, the government collapsed. That's because the West is bankrupt. These governments are dysfunctional. The Biden-Harris administration was dysfunctional. The only thing they were good at is starting new wars and getting people killed, but not doing anything positive for mankind. So in this current situation, the most important matter is to consider a new security and economic architecture. We have to get rid of the failed British free trade system, and in the United States, return to the American system of Alexander Hamilton, John Quincy Adams, George Washington, and most emphatically the work of the American economist Lyndon LaRouche. The United States must urgently open up channels of communication to Russia and China. The incoming Trump administration would do well to hear what President Putin and Xi Jinping think about the crises around the world as well as the potential for development. The United States must stop sending weapons to Israel and Ukraine immediately and force an end to those conflicts. We must have a peaceful reconstruction plan for Southwest Asia, modeled on the Oasis Plan of Lyndon LaRouche. Perhaps most importantly and decisive, the US, Russia, China, India, other large nations must meet to establish a new economic system. The issue is not whether it's based on the dollar or not. The issue is, can the currencies be pegged to a gold reserve system or some other commodity so that we can go back to a system of fixed exchange rates and a policy of long-term low interest credit so that every nation on the planet has an equal right to develop. That includes emphatically the United States, where we are crumbling, we are falling apart at the seams. Our nation needs about 500 new nuclear power plants, 43,000 miles of high-speed rail. We should not be tearing down dams and water management projects as the Biden-Harris administration has done, but building modern water management infrastructure. And we must work with Russia, China, South Korea, ITER to develop fusion energy as a new platform to ensure that mankind has an abundant, inexpensive, clean, actually renewable form of energy for decades to come. And once we are using fusion, we will go beyond that. We also have to revive the space program. We need a Mars colonization mission. China and Russia are planning to build a nuclear power plant on the moon by 2035. You have to industrialize the moon if you're going to get to Mars. This will create millions of jobs in science and technology, and it has the fringe benefit of not being destructive. It will not kill people, but increase and improve their life expectancy and standard of living. These are the choices ahead of us. So don't be a cheerleader. Demand that the wars must end, that the United States must talk with Russia and China, and that the world must enter into a whole new series of agreements and establish a new security and economic architecture.